was in the United States for the 50th NATO summit. Monday night, by the way, Attorney General Janet Reno, Maria Shriver, and Sally Jesse Raphael among the guests. That's Monday night. Stay tuned now for a CNN special on the school shooting in Colorado with an update on Kosovo. It is hosted by Jean Meserve. It is next. It is now.
This is CNN. This is a special report from CNN. In Littleton, Colorado, 911 tapes of the first cries for help.
Is there any way you can lock the doors? Smoke is coming in from out there, and I'm a little bit. The gun is right outside the library door, okay? I don't think I'm going to go out there, okay?
And a timeline established. As more information is gathered, more questions arise about the two suspects, the weapons, and a motive.
Guns are everywhere. You can buy them on the street. They're readily available. They're very easy to acquire.
Did they work alone? And were there warning signs that these two teenagers were capable of mass murder? And the first of many funerals to come. John Tomlin, age 16. In Washington, D.C., pomp and ceremony, but little celebration as the war in Kosovo overshadows the 50th anniversary of the NATO alliance.
Our message is clear. Peace and humanity will prevail in Kosovo.
NATO resolves to continue the airstrikes in Yugoslavia until victory, as leaders redefine NATO for the future. A CNN special report. From Washington, Jean Meserve.
Thanks for joining us. Upping the ante in its conflict with Belgrade yet again, NATO has approved planning to stop and search vessels heading into a pair of Montenegrin ports. The aim to prevent imported oil from reaching Yugoslavia. Word of this decision comes as NATO heads of state are at the White House attending a dinner commemorating the alliance's 50th anniversary. We will examine NATO at the half-century mark and update you on Operation Allied Force later. But our special begins in Littleton, Colorado, with the first of many tearful goodbyes. Earlier today, hundreds of people packed into a local church attending a memorial service for John Tomlin, one of the 15 people who died inside Columbine High. From authorities, tapes of two 911 calls made during Tuesday's siege. Some segments are difficult to understand, but the terror comes through loud and clear. Against this backdrop, Jefferson County District Attorney Dave Thomas makes an emotional plea for an end to what he calls the epidemic of violence in the U.S. For the latest from Littleton, we turn to CNN's Martin Savage on the scene. Martin?
Gene, one of the most significant developments of the day revolving around the investigation was a meeting that took place between all of the investigators. About 150 investigators in the state, local, and federal level gathered together today to share all the information that they have gleaned over the past few days. They have done almost 500 interviews. We are told this massive debriefing session lasted most of the day, and when it was concluded, those law enforcement officials came out and said that there was renewed interest now in the possibility of what the eyewitnesses on the scene say was a third suspect directly involved in the attack on Columbine High School. Also today, as you mentioned, the 911 tapes, the first calls were released today. You're going to hear two phone calls, one coming from a student. You also hear another phone call coming from a very frantic teacher who is in a classroom with her students just a short distance away from the library where most of the killings took place. And there are also the police dispatch, the radio reports as officers arrive on scene. Here's a sample of some of those tapes.
Did you see what happened? No, I didn't. I just saw everyone running and I ran to the telephone. Okay, we had a report of an explosion down there. Was it a car fire or anything? People are saying there was a gun. There's like smoke going off in the parking lot right now. There's loud noises. I'm not sure exactly. Cops just pulled up. People are running out the school like mad right now.
Some teachers, I think somebody is in the school with a gun.
Teacher of Columbine High School. There is a student here with a gun. Has anybody been injured? Yes. Okay. And the school is in a panic. And I'm in the library. I've got students down under the table, kids. Heads under the table. Kids are screaming. Some of the teachers are, trying to take control of it. Please, you. Okay.
Put your hand in there.
Please, kids. Yes,
Who is the student, ma'am?
I do not know who the student is.
Okay.
I saw a student outside. I was in hold earlier, but... Okay. I was on hold
Tulsa today, it was confirmed the existence of a videotape from surveillance cameras inside of the high school. That videotape may have captured not only the activity that took place Tuesday afternoon, but also perhaps covering several days prior to that, in which suspects may have been seen carrying some of the explosives into the building. That tape is now in the hands of authorities and is actually on its way to Washington, D.C. to be analyzed by the FBI crime labs. In Littleton, Colorado, I'm Martin Savage, CNN.
Thanks, Martin. A Columbine High School junior who was shot in the leg was released from the hospital today. Mackay Hall says he took a class with 17-year-old Dylan Klebold, one of the suspected gunmen.
I thought he was an all right guy. I don't know. I worked with him sometimes. And he wasn't the kind of person that he's being portrayed as.
Hall says he hid under a library table during the shooting, at one point tossing away a pipe bomb that one of the suspects threw under the table. Memorials are scheduled throughout the weekend in Littleton. CNN's Charles Ziwi joins us from outside the St. Francis Cabrini Church in Littleton, where a vigil is currently underway. Charles?
Gene, it is another very tough night of tears and hugs. Let's go inside now, where Ray Fleming, the godfather of 16-year-old Kelly Fleming, one of the victims, is now speaking.
We know where you're at. I'd like to ask a favor from you. I know you're listening to us. Please ask God to grant your mom and dad and your sister Erin the strength and courage to make it through this most difficult time. Thank you.
Lord Jesus.
Ray Fleming, the godfather of 16-year-old Kelly Fleming. She was a young lady killed in the library. She wanted to be a writer. Also being remembered tonight, 16-year-old Matt Kechter, who had aspirations of getting on the varsity football team. He was a big kid, 210 pounds, but a gentle giant who made straight A's, never bragged about it. Also being remembered tonight, 15-year-old Daniel Mauser, another young man who was challenged by cross country, a shy boy who excelled in math and science and wanted to do a lot with his life. And his friends say he was the kind of kid who was not afraid to hug his mom in front of other people. Earlier today, there was another memorial service for another victim of the Columbine High School shooting, a young man who wanted to go into the U.S. Army to become a member of the Special Forces to rescue people. Snowy Littleton, Colorado began saying goodbye to the dead from Columbine High with a memorial service for 16-year-old John Tomlin. Tomlin, a sophomore, was remembered for his love of church, the Green Bay Packers, and Chevy pickups.
Always driving his four-wheel truck. He loved that truck. I mean, always having a smile on his face.
It was hard just to think that some monster held a gun up to my friend's face and then just shot him.
Where tears turn.
During the service, two buddies and Tomlin's girlfriend remembered the teenager.
Who knew that the only way to heaven and have eternal life is by believing in Jesus Christ as Savior and Lord.
The biggest impact John had on me was how much he cared about me. And how much he would do anything in the world to make me smile and to make me happy.
Tomlin's pastor called on Coloradans to turn away from anger over what he called Black Tuesday.
Do not be overcome by evil, but overcome evil with good.
At a news conference following the service, Tomlin's grieving mother called for a return to religious values.
But I think this is bringing people closer together. I think the country is sick and tired of the violence and the crime. And I think it's drawing people together, so hopefully it'll become stronger and people will be looking to God through it all.
John Tomlin is to be buried in his native Wisconsin. Charles Ziwi, CNN, Littleton, Colorado.
The 14 others who died include the two suspected gunmen, a popular teacher, and students who aspired to making their mark in the arts, sports, and the military.
17-year-old Rachel Scott loved photography, acting, and debating. Her funeral is tomorrow. Cassie Bernal was 17, a junior and a born-again Christian who often brought her Bible to school. Stephen Robert Curnow was a 14-year-old freshman who dreamed of becoming a Navy pilot. Corey DePuter loved hunting, fishing, and wrestling. He was 17. Kelly Fleming moved to Littleton from Phoenix 18 months ago. She loved to write poetry and short stories. The 16-year-old junior was preparing to get her driver's license. Matthew Kechter was a 16-year-old sophomore who played offensive and defensive positions on the school's football team. He had an A average. Daniel Mauser was a straight-A student who recently returned from a 2-week trip to Paris with his French class. The 15-year-old sophomore loved science and math. Daniel Rohrbo was 15 and worked in his family's business after school. He was shot after running back to the cafeteria to help other students get out. Isaiah Scholes overcame a childhood congenital heart defect to become an athlete. The 18-year-old senior wanted to become a record company executive. 18-year-old Lauren Townsend was the captain of the girls' volleyball team, a member of the National Honor Society, and was a candidate for class valedictorian. She had planned to attend Colorado State University in the fall. Kyle Velasquez was also killed. Few details of his life are known at this time. Teacher and coach Dave Sanders was married with 4 daughters and 10 grandchildren. As students tried unsuccessfully to keep him alive on Tuesday, he looked at photos of his family. Suspect Eric Harris was described as very articulate and intelligent. In fact, other classmates considered him to be one of the smartest students in their class. Both he and Dylan Klebold, the other suspected gunman, had just completed a juvenile diversion program. His supervisor said that Klebold was intelligent enough to make any dream a reality.
Hey, Peter Lynch, the Fidelity guy.
Hey, Don. Working hard?
Vegas, Atlantic City. The airlines know me so well, they call ahead and say they lost my luggage.
Changing jobs so much, you should take your retirement money with you.
I've got money sitting in places even my in-laws couldn't find.
Roll that money over. Really? Your pension, your 401k. Put in one place, Fidelity.
Call today to roll over your eligible retirement plan savings with Fidelity's Rollover Express. It's fast, it's easy, it's smart.
I'll call them, Peter, if that's okay with you, sir.
Some folks think they'll never be a good gardener. Well, that's nonsense. All they need is confidence and a little Miracle Grow.
When I first started gardening, a dear old friend of mine said, listen, if you're going to garden, take this. It's magic. Feed them a little Miracle Grow and get good, long-lasting, colorful blooms. Great leaves, strong roots. Check it out. Miracle Grow will keep your flowers blooming all summer long. Miracle Grow. It's a little bit of magic.
Now give your new transplants a fast start with Miracle Grow Quick Start.
Harry. Hey, little brother. Well, that is one cute accountant suit.
Quit it. Here's your taxes. What amazed me was your phone bills are so low.
Mr. Numbers hasn't heard of 10-10-3-2-1?
I heard. I just didn't realize it worked so well.
A money wizard like you should try it. You save 50% on calls over 10 minutes.
50%? There must be a monthly fee.
Not with 10-10-3-2-1. Just try it. If you don't like saving money, don't dial it again.
Makes sense. Maybe you should be the financial advisor.
Nah. Then I'd have to wear that suit.
The kids come first. They're always on your mind. They're always first and foremost there. I'm Cynthia Hodges. I work at Ford Motor Company. I'm an engineer, and I'm also a mom.
We're the people who buy and use Windstar. We know what it's like to have kids, and that helped us design this car. It's full of ideas that moms will love.
I'm able to open the doors, and they're not blinded by a dome light.
Because you never want to wake a sleeping baby.
That allows me to listen to the music I like, and my kids can listen to what they like in the back.
My mom's favorite type of music is old stuff.
This sensor is really smart. The beeps get faster as you're about to back into something. Beep, 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 beep.
Parents always want the best for their children.
The safety rating. Safety was the utmost importance, and the 5-star rating was a big deal.
I designed it for my neighbors. I designed it for my playgroup. I designed it for what's now become a part of my life.
Hey, my mom built that car.
Better ideas, driven by you.
Littleton, Colorado is the latest name on a grim list of U.S. communities where schools have been turned into killing zones. Among those preceding it, Jonesboro, Arkansas, West Paducah, Kentucky, and Pearl, Mississippi. Each time a name is added to the list, people grapple with how to ensure it is the last. CNN national correspondent Tony Clark with one example.
Anguished parents, injured and dead students and faculty, an all too common scene.
And we're seeing it not only here, but we've seen it in other American communities of every way, shape, and form. And it must stop.
Dave Thomas is the district attorney in Jefferson County, Colorado. Friday, he spoke not as a prosecutor, but as a lifelong Littleton resident and the father of 2 former Columbine students.
We can't walk away from here and wait for the next incident to occur and then go cover that incident and not learn from this. I think that would be a serious mistake.
Thomas expressed concern about the influence movies, video games, and music may be having on young people. The internet, he said, also may have played a role in this week's bloodshed.
I think we need to explore some of those very, very difficult issues that involve privacy issues. They involve freedom of speech, freedom of the press, and I think we need to think very carefully as a society about those issues.
Weapons are too easy to get, Thomas said. Responsibility too easy to avoid.
I think we've become a very, very lax society in terms of our values.
Suspected gunmen Dylan Klebold and Eric Harris just completed the district attorney's juvenile diversion program and were considered to be bright young men with great potential.
And it's obvious that in this case, it did not prevent what happened, so it was not successful in preventing future criminality.
Thomas called for a nationwide effort to stop school violence. The key, he said, is simple.
It's a concept that most of us learned when we were kids about treating other people with respect.
According to a friend of the suspected gunman, respect was the one thing they wanted and never got. Tony Clark, CNN, Littleton, Colorado.
In the struggle to figure out why tragedies like the Columbine High massacres happen, there's a lot of finger-pointing. Some people suggest a segment of popular music, hard-edged, often emphasizing violent themes, may be partially to blame when young people go bad. CNN's Paul Verkaman reports.
The sights and sounds of the Colorado school massacre are prompting some to ask if this rampage could have been inspired in part by other sights and sounds, hard rock music. Schoolmates of the suspected shooters, Eric Harris and Dylan Klebold, say the pair reportedly listened to bands such as 9 Inch Nails with its nihilistic themes, shock rocker Marilyn Manson, and KMFDM, founded in Germany with a bombastic backbeat and apocalyptic vision. Here are KMFDM's words as shown on the band's webpage. Shockwave, massive attack, atomic blast, son of a gun is back. Chaos, panic, no resistance, detonations in a distance. KMFDM has broken up. Former member Sasha K issued a statement expressing sympathy and saying our music has been a statement against war, oppression, fascism, and violence. At Thursday's screening of MTV's Warning Signs, the network's documentary about school violence, leading adolescent psychologists would not make direct links between violence and music.
Because it's a learned behavior, witnessing violence in the family, in the community, and in the media are potential contributing factors to it. Music would be the same way. But we also know that not every kid who sees some violent episode or listens to some violent piece of music goes out and acts violently.
Students agree.
If you're okay in the head, then you won't let it get to you and you won't take that literally. It's just for entertainment.
But that raises another question about lyrics and violence. What impact might they have on a youngster who's grown up in unusual circumstances, possibly highly traumatic, who's already displaying a tendency toward violent acts?
If there are individuals who have a propensity towards violence or poor anger control, that these constant images reinforce those feelings, may even exacerbate those feelings. But I think that it's critically important for people to realize that someone who does not have violent feelings or thoughts after watching a violent video doesn't turn into a violent person.
In the aftermath of the Columbine school killings, Dr. Martin warns there may be too much talk about the massacre, media, and music.
I think a lot of times we look for places to blame so we can feel better that it's not us. And I think that that deflection of personal responsibility is part of why we are disconnected and why we have the violence that we have today.
The lesson here may be it's not about what music children are listening to, it's about listening to children. Paul Verkaman, CNN, Hollywood.
Ahead, a conversation with a child psychologist, David Elkind, author of All Grown Up and No Place to Go, Teenagers in Crisis, will join us.
At first, Ramada and Holiday Inn may look similar. So to set us apart, at Ramada, we always give our personal best. At Ramada, we throw ourselves into our work. For reservations, call 1-800-2-RAMADA.
The sexiest movie of the year is now the best picture of the year and the winner of 7 Academy Awards, including Best Actress Gwyneth Paltrow.
The house is stirring. It is a new day. It is a new world.
In a film critics say has it all. Adventure.
You're on my ground now!
Comedy.
That would have them rolling in the eye.
And romance.
You would not believe me.
It's everything you want a movie to be. Shakespeare in Love, rated R. Now playing everywhere.
On January 11th, it was official. PSINet became the first independent internet provider to fully circle the globe. Your business information can now traverse the continents without leaving the reliability and security of the PSINet network. Why a global link? Because your business knows no boundaries in this marketplace we call the world. PSINet. For thousands of businesses worldwide, the internet starts here.
Sunday on CNN Newsstand. Littleton, a Colorado high school, becomes a killing ground. What could have set 2 suburban teens onto a path of senseless violence? CNN and Time. Sunday, 10/9 Central on CNN.
Where'd you get the club?
Accounting.
County gave you a club?
Yeah, I made him a deal.
Deal?
Whenever my cell bills are half as much as yours, they give me a club.
Aren't you on the phone all the time?
Yeah, but I have Nextel. My calls are rounded to the second. I pay less.
It's not fair. I want to be rounded to the second. I want clubs.
Where do I get my putter?
Giving you a putter?
Nextel's 1-second rounding makes ordinary cell phones seem ordinary.
No matter where people figure in your company's future, we'll have the furniture that configures to your people. Hayworth, furniture for what's next.
Introducing the new intercontinental business class from Iberia Airlines. It has to be seen to be believed. Iberia Airlines, the best-kept secret of European travel.
As victims of other school shootings have learned that terror, pain, and suffering can linger for a lifetime, CNN's Don Knapp reports on one family's long struggle back.
Eric and Brian Taylor know firsthand the horrors children suffer in a school shooting. They survived one 10 years ago in Stockton, California.
That's an immediate right here.
5 children died. 30 children and teachers were wounded when Patrick Purdy walked onto the Cleveland Elementary School playground at recess and opened fire with an AK-47 assault rifle. Eric was 8 years old when a bullet slammed into his back. It remains lodged near his spine.
I still have the bullet in me, yeah. I don't feel it very often, only on long car rides.
The emotional injuries were even more difficult to overcome. Years later in counseling, Eric began talking about them and learned to use them as inspiration.
It's just something that I remember, and it just inspires me to do what I want to do.
And how? What? Knowing how awful it could have been? Or
yeah, how it could have been. That's a lot of what it is. Like how, I'm still okay.
Brian, who was then 6, was not hit. But the brothers agree Brian's emotional injuries may have been greater than Eric's gunshot wound.
For a while, I wouldn't go outside. I was afraid of daylight besides nighttime. Always thinking someone was outside my window, just waiting for me.
While Eric's physical wounds brought him attention and sometimes gifts, Brian's emotional injuries were, for a while, ignored.
They didn't think about the fact that, you know, Brian had to walk through dead bodies in order to get to the safety of his classroom. And those memories were real.
Music has been another kind of therapy for Eric. He's in a rock band.
Music, it really helps me get out my passions and emotions. It really sums up everything I've ever felt.
After the 1989 Stockton shooting, Eric and his mother testified before a U.S. Senate subcommittee on school safety.
They're still talking about the same problems. We're still having the same discussions about availability of guns to children, to, individuals, and nothing has changed. And in fact, it's gotten worse.
Although the Taylors say they've finally gained an optimistic outlook on life, they remain pessimistic about any chance for an end to school violence. Don Knapp, CNN, Healdsburg, California.
More now on the investigation into the rampage at Columbine High School. We go back to Martin Savage in Littleton. Martin.
Jim, we're joined by Sergeant Jim Parr, who is with the Jefferson County Sheriff's Department. Thank you for being with us tonight, Sergeant. Let's talk about the meeting that took place today. What was the reasoning behind it and what was gained from it?
Okay. We've had various teams of investigators working on this case, and at some point the investigators need to come back as individuals to talk to the group to decide what they've learned, who they've interviewed, what evidence has been gathered, and then plan for the future, who else they need to talk to, where they need to go, what other investigative avenues still need to be pursued.
Is there new emphasis being put on the student reports that there was a third person, specifically in a white T-shirt, seen the day of the assault?
We heard that since day one, since Tuesday, that there may be three. We never discounted the possibility that there might be three. To this point, we have physical evidence indicating the two deceased suspects, but that's not to say that we won't find 3, 4, or maybe other people involved.
Tracing of the weapons, the guns specifically, have you had success with that?
Yes, through the assistance of Bureau of Alcohol, Tobacco, and Firearms, we have been able to trace at least some of the lineage of those weapons, and that is being withheld as investigative clues.
We also know that authorities confirmed today the existence of a videotape from surveillance cameras in the high school. What can you glean from that we don't already know?
Well, hopefully we'll be able to look at those cameras and see if there were the suspects caught on film, and if so, how many there were, if they seem to have any accomplices or Confederates, or maybe that will help establish for us that there were only 2. So that'll be part of the investigation in one piece.
You've also had a great deal of interest coming from outside police departments. What is that about?
Anytime a agency has a catastrophe of this size, other agencies want to be able to learn and to prepare and to train. We have had interest with other agencies wanting to come out, and some have already come out, some will be coming out in the future to talk to us and to learn everything they can about our experiences here, so in case, God forbid, they should have something like this in their jurisdictions, they'll be a little bit better prepared.
Tomorrow, will your people be back inside the high school again?
Yes, the plan is starting at 8 our time, the lab, investigators, and bomb squad will be in. About noon, the lab and the bomb squad will leave, and then the bomb squad will have the rest of Saturday and all day Sunday to finish clearing the building.
Sergeant Jim Parr, thank you very much for joining us this evening. Back to you, Gene.
Martin, thank you. And be sure to tune in to CNN next Thursday evening. Jeff Greenfield hosts a town meeting with students and parents across the country listening after Littleton. That's Thursday from 7:30 to 9 Eastern. Just ahead on this special report, the day's other big story, as NATO celebrates its golden anniversary, it debates its mission in Yugoslavia.
Sunday on CNN's Late Edition, the latest on Kosovo with National Security Advisor Samuel Berger, plus the Colorado school shooting, Sunday noon Eastern on CNN.
Welcome to Truck Town.
It's the grand opening of the Northwest's used truck capital.
All we do is sell used trucks. Almost every make and model, foreign and domestic, is here.
Dependable rigs starting from just $19.95. Monthly payments from $99. You want to save a buck on a good used truck? Then you're in luck.
It's the grand opening of Truck Town.
Located at Bob Lanfear's Beaverton Chrysler Plymouth dealership on Canyon Road. Just by Bob.
For a limited time, Car Stereo City's Wireless Universe has the cellular phone sale you've been waiting for. And with coverage from AT&T Wireless Services, you won't want to miss this offer. Get a better than free digital phone for Nokia or Ericsson with 560 minutes of talk time for only $9.98 per month. That's right, a free digital phone with 560 minutes talk time for only $9.98. Hurry to Car Stereo City, where it's always our goal to have the lowest prices in the Northwest every day, every hour, every sale. Now at Car Stereo City, get free installation of most Card X and CD players.
The Moneyline News Hour with Lou Dobbs, weeknight 6:30 Eastern on CNN.
Another night, another wave of NATO bombings in Yugoslavia. According to reports out of Belgrade, at least 20 missiles hit the southern town of Niš. It's the headquarters for the army group responsible for operations in Kosovo. A bridge, the city's water mains, and an industrial zone reportedly were damaged. Damage also was reported in the capital of Kosovo, Pristina. For the latest on the NATO operation, we go to CNN military affairs correspondent Jamie McIntyre at the Pentagon. Jamie, some new action on the oil front.
That's right, Gene. Senior NATO officials tell CNN that NATO's Supreme Commander, General Wes Clark, has been directed to draw up plans as soon as possible for what officials are calling a visit and search regime for ships going into the Montenegrin port of Bar and Kotor Bay. In addition, General Clark has been directed to step up attacks on some pipelines and distribution facilities in Serbia, but not to bomb those facilities in Montenegro, which is a semi-autonomous part of Yugoslavia and has been seeking a transition to democracy. Now, officials are careful not to call the action a naval blockade, which has a specific meaning in international law, but in essence, that's what it amounts to. The action by the 19 defense ministers will begin a process that will have to be finalized by the North Atlantic Council, NATO's political arm. That could happen as soon as next week. Now, significantly, in directing these plans for a maritime interdiction operation, NATO is ruling out attacks on a substantial oil processing facility at the port of Bar in Montenegro, or mining the harbors, or any attacks inside the borders of the province. Now, defense ministers also agreed that NATO's air campaign has to continue to be intensified, and the Pentagon announced today it is sending 2,000 more troops, 15 more tanks, 14 more Bradley fighting vehicles, 9 more anti-personnel missile systems into Tirana, Albania, in order to reinforce a battalion of 24 Apache attack helicopters. The additional deployments begin early next week and bring the number of troops in Albania to just over 5,000. Gene?
Jamie, some people hearing about these additional troops might wonder if this is a prelude to the use of ground troops in Kosovo. Is it?
Well, no, the Pentagon insists that it is not the groundwork for any possible future NATO invasion force. These troops and tanks have a specific mission, which is to make sure that the Apache helicopters are well protected both at their base in Albania and if they are used to carry out attacks in Kosovo. Gene?
Jamie McIntyre at the Pentagon. Thank you. The leaders of the 19-member NATO countries are meeting here in Washington for the alliance's 50th anniversary. Tonight, they're dining at a reception in the East Room of the White House. This event, like others, is being toned down because of the strike against Yugoslavia. Throughout this summit, the main topic of discussion is Operation Allied Force and how to intensify it and what has to happen for it to end. CNN World Affairs correspondent Ralph Begleiter reports.
Today's NATO leaders used the same auditorium their predecessors used 50 years ago when the alliance was born. Then, Harry Truman promised a NATO that would influence peace not only in the area it specifically covers, but throughout the world. The 50th anniversary summit began while NATO bombs were falling outside the borders of alliance countries in Yugoslavia.
In Kosovo.
The summiteers' first act was to talk tough about the bombing to put a stop to Serbia's expulsion of Kosovo's ethnic population.
We cannot and we will not stand by and let this hideous policy of ethnic cleansing succeed. Defeating it and reversing it is the best anniversary memorial NATO could possibly have.
The alliance will not have meaning in the 21st century if it permits the slaughter of innocents on its doorstep.
of the 3 new
But at a roundtable war council, the Allies laid out this scenario for ending the Kosovo war based on a German proposal floated last week. NATO will seek a United Nations resolution giving Slobodan Milosevic the political cover of a UN directive. The UN would require Serb withdrawal from Kosovo on a precise and rapid timetable. When withdrawal begins, NATO would suspend the bombing. An international military force, mandated not by NATO but by the UN, would move in to safeguard the swift return of all refugees. The Allies have already damaged Yugoslavia's fuel supply. The summit endorsed a European Union oil blockade and pledged to choke off oil supplies through Montenegro from the Adriatic Sea. The NATO summit leaders did not authorize ground troops for Kosovo because many allies, including Spain, Germany, Greece, Hungary, and the United States, are not ready for it.
A ground invasion from the north, as it is sometimes referred to, that is through Hungary, is not acceptable for us.
British officials say ground forces in Kosovo could go in without agreement from Belgrade. But other NATO allies tell CNN the rest of the alliance is not ready to fight its way in.
We have a strategy, and I said nobody is considering changing it.
The NATO leaders signed a ceremonial declaration affirming collective defense as NATO's core mission. Beneath the surface of NATO unity, there are lots of disagreements on ground troops, on the oil embargo, even on the bombing. But the fact remains, NATO is continuing and intensifying its first-ever combat operation with no end in sight. Ralph Begleiter, CNN at the NATO summit in Washington.
Still to come as we look at the strike against Yugoslavia, an interview with the foreign minister of the Czech Republic, and NATO tries to pull the plug on Serbian TV. First.
At first glance, NATO's 19 member nations would seem to have a decisive military advantage over Yugoslavia. But the size of Yugoslavia's military is considerable. There are approximately 114,000 active-duty soldiers, including about 40,000 in and around Kosovo, 100 surface-to-air missiles, 1,850 air defense artillery pieces, 240 combat aircraft, 48 attack helicopters, 1,270 tanks, 825 armored fighting vehicles. Strike against Yugoslavia continues after this.
I come by this honestly. My grandparents were farmers. I've made bouquets for people for years, and people finally said, why don't you start selling those things? I think the secret behind a lot of this has to do with Miracle-Gro. Miracle-Gro has produced very sturdy plants, long stems, big blossoms. Look at the colors. What more could I ask for? The compliment has to go to Miracle-Gro.
Now give your new transplants a fast start with Miracle-Gro Quick Start.
At first, Ramada and Holiday Inn may look similar. So to set us apart, at Ramada, we always give our personal best. At Ramada, we throw ourselves into our work. For reservations, call 1-800-2-RAMADA.
Courage, something shared by countless Americans. Those who risked their lives, those who battled serious illness. When I was diagnosed with prostate cancer, I was primarily concerned with ridding myself of the cancer. But secondly, I was concerned about possible post-operative side effects like erectile dysfunction, ED, often called impotence. You know, it's a little embarrassing to talk about ED, but it's so important to millions of men and their partners that I decided to talk about it publicly. And after all, it can be associated with many conditions, including prostate surgery, high blood pressure, diabetes, or even smoking. And the point I want to make is there are many treatments available for ED, so my advice is get a medical checkup. It's the best way to get educated about ED and what can be done to treat it. It may take a little courage, but I've always found that everything worthwhile does.
I see we're getting quite a jump on this.
Has just made like a sort of a recent
move in the last 3 minutes.
How's your day going?
How are the pharmaceutical stocks doing?
First thing on the docket is to get as much information as I can.
Yeah, let me check it.
Average daily volume being 27,000, so it looks like we're on track. So I can provide our clients with the best detailed information possible.
We're going to help them with all the research and all the information that we have here.
There's some regulatory legislation going adverse effect on their stock.
Chart looks good.
Checking with you next week.
Sounds great. Nice talking to you. Have a good weekend.
Have a good weekend, too.
Thanks.
Joining me now to discuss NATO's role in the Balkans and the direction the alliance is taking in the post-communist world, Jan Kavan. He is the foreign minister of the Czech Republic, one of 3 countries which joined the alliance just last month. Thanks for joining us. Your country joined the NATO alliance, and within 2 weeks it was bombing Yugoslavia. This had to have been something of a shock.
It was even shorter. It was within a week. Yes, I have to admit that when I arrived at Independence, Missouri, to hand over the ratification papers to Secretary Albright, I didn't expect that within a week Javier Solana will be phoning us to inform us about the bombing. It was one of the toughest tests of our loyalty to NATO to experience, but I think we came out with flying colors, and we have proven to be a trustworthy and loyal ally.
There is a rift in your government, as I understand it. President Havel supports the airstrikes, but your prime minister has called them the work of primitive troglodytes. Where are you on this issue, and does this division of opinion within your government affect the role you're able to play within the alliance?
I think this particular quote from the prime minister is taken slightly out of context.
But does he oppose the airstrikes?
No, he doesn't. I think the government is now fairly united and backs the NATO's airstrikes. We will probably not be prepared, if it ever takes place, to join any kind of forced entry, i.e. A classical invasion into Kosovo against the will of the Yugoslav government. And on that, I think the government will probably say this is the Rubicon we don't want to cross. But on all the other measures, we will fully support, including the Prime Minister, fully support NATO.
Why is that the Rubicon you don't want to cross?
At the moment, we're not convinced that this would actually be a solution to a problem. The military and civilian toll will be enormous, and it's a question whether the political price would be worth it. I think that to continue with the airstrikes at the moment, in particular, if the strikes are aimed at military and semi-military targets, and that part of the infrastructure on which the military machinery is dependent, is probably a better solution, and at the same time to look for solutions, peace solutions, to bring Milosevic to the negotiating table while guaranteeing a return of the refugees.
You mentioned military targeting, and I'm wondering if you're at all bothered by some of the targeting in recent days, specifically Serbian TV, the residence of Slobodan Milosevic. Are those military targets in your opinion?
I'm not a military general, but if I would have been one, I don't think I would have selected the Serbian TV.
Why not?
Because it's a propaganda. It's run by Milosevic's daughter. It confuses and misinforms people. Yes, but I don't think it's a military target. It was taken off the air for 5 hours, and in fact, the bombing of the Serbian TV can actually be used against NATO to show that maybe they are too worried about the propaganda. So I think that they are better targets than the Serbian TV, as I fully understand the frustration that you are pursuing a just cause, and the Serbian TV, by very clever manipulation, shows you as the aggressor.
I want to ask you about the move announced tonight that NATO defense ministers have given the okay for planning for the stopping and searching of ships that might be bringing oil to Yugoslavia. Do you believe that NATO has the right to do this without United Nations action?
I have to admit that I would have preferred United Nations mandate, and I still hope that at least the main 5 conditions put forward by NATO, or the bulk of it, would in time gain UN approval or Security Council mandate. I would have preferred that. However, without it, I still think that NATO was right to stop the oil supplies to the tanks, to the whole military repressive machinery. Because if simply, if you dry up that supplies and you stop the tanks in their tracks and you stop the armed repression of the Kosovo civilians, you are halfway towards ending this conflict and ending the killing of innocent people.
Jan Kavan, Czech Foreign Minister, thanks so much for joining us tonight.
Thank you.
Serbian TV was back on the air for a while today despite NATO's attack on its Belgrade headquarters 24 hours ago. At least 10 people were reported killed. Yugoslav officials call the attack a criminal act. The International Federation of Journalists says NATO violated its pledge to attack only military targets, and Amnesty International is demanding an explanation from NATO. More on the attack and the fallout from CNN's Alessio Vinci.
The bombing of state television was an attempt, according to officials here, to prevent Yugoslavia from telling its own version of this war.
Attempt to silence the truth. Attempt to monopolize the situation. Attempt to sideline not only Yugoslav journalists, your colleagues, but also yourselves.
NATO justified the attack, calling state radio and television a source of propaganda and one of the main pillars of President Milosevic's hold on power. In fact, Serbian television has played a central role here throughout this war by providing extensive coverage of NATO bombs and missiles gone astray, focusing on the massive destruction of industry, infrastructure, and loss of civilian lives. And by broadcasting anti-NATO propaganda like this one, in an attempt to unite Serbs behind one version of the story, dramatically different from the one presented in the West. There has been little mention on Serb television of the hundreds of thousands of refugees which have left Kosovo. And when refugees are mentioned, the state broadcaster has blamed NATO bombs for the humanitarian catastrophe, or has shown them allegedly returning to their homes. Journalists seen here 3 weeks ago in the newsroom that now lays in ruin told us that if NATO were to bomb their building, it would not silence them.
Because it is impossible to kill the truth. It is impossible, really impossible. This is not only television here. We have some other stations, and we have newspapers, and we have radio stations in not matter in what way, but in some way the truth will going on.
Serbian television went back on the air only 6 hours after the attack, with a determination to continue broadcasting no matter what. Alessio Vinci, CNN, Belgrade.
We remind our viewers CNN's reporting from Yugoslavia is subject to certain restrictions set by Yugoslav authorities. CNN must seek permission to videotape news events, and unrestricted travel outside of Belgrade is not permitted. The United Nations says it needs $625 million to provide for Kosovo refugees through June. The UN High Commissioner for Refugees estimates some 600,000 refugees are now living in neighboring countries such as Albania and Macedonia. More on the refugees from CNN's Ben Wiedemann.
These Kosovar Albanians are returning to their homes, according to state-controlled Serbian television, but first given food and water by a government official. Iftiman Chovanai claims Serb officials gave him very different treatment. Serb soldiers marched him toward the border. Walk straight ahead, he says an officer told him, and don't look left or right, or we'll kill you. Serb television describes these scenes as Kosovars from all ethnic groups protesting NATO bombings. By contrast, refugees crossing the border describe Kosovo as under a reign of ethnic terror. We were afraid to leave the house, says Gona Kutsi. There was shooting outside every day. I was afraid Serb soldiers would kidnap me. Many of the refugees arriving in Albania tell similar stories. They say Serb police or soldiers came to their homes and ordered them to leave at once. Their houses were torched. On the road to the border, they say, Serb forces robbed them, in some cases beat them. In other cases, refugees were killed. So who is to be believed? Serb television or hundreds of thousands of refugees? At least on this side of the border, there doesn't seem to be any doubt.
Every refugee has a story to tell, and the consistency there, as I said, is so great that it's impossible for this to be fabricated.
International observers aren't allowed into Kosovo, and the few journalists who have visited did so under Serb supervision, making both these Serb TV reports and the reports from the refugees impossible to verify. Ben Wiedemann, CNN, Kukas, Albania.
Once the Kosovo crisis is resolved, what other threats could NATO face? More on that when our special report continues.
The kids come first. They're always on your mind. They're always first and foremost there. I'm Cynthia Hodges. I work at Ford Motor Company. I'm an engineer, and I'm also a mom. We're the people who buy and use Windstar.
We know what it's like to have kids, and that helped us design this car. It's full of ideas that moms will love.
I'm able to open the doors, and they're not blinded by a dome light.
Because you never want to wake a sleeping baby.
That allows me to listen to the music I like, and my kids can listen to what they like in the back.
My mom's favorite type of music is old stuff.
This sensor is really smart. The beeps get faster as you're about to back into something. Beep, 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 beep.
Parents always want the best for their children.
The safety rating. Safety was the utmost importance, and the 5-star rating was a big deal.
I designed it for my neighbors. I designed it for my playgroup. I designed it for what's now become a part of my life.
Hey, my mom built that car.
Better ideas, driven by you.
People ask me what's the market going to do 2 years from now, 5 years from now. I say, I really don't know. I really don't know. But I think companies' profits will be higher in the future. Companies are working very hard out there to invent new products, to improve the quality of their service. I believe they'll be making more money 10 years from now and 20 years from now. When people really get worried, they ought to go to the playground and look at 6-year-olds. They don't know what's happening to money supply. They don't know what's happening to interest rates. So you really shouldn't worry about what happens this week or tomorrow or the day after. And the world will be fine.
Visit our website or call your advisor.
If you expect your people to start thinking out of the box, they need to stop working in one. Hayworth, furniture for what's next.
Sunday on CNN Perspectives. See why Serbs in war-torn Kosovo say their cause is just, and why the Kosovar Albanians say they just cannot give up. Kosovo the Valley, CNN Perspectives, Sunday, 8 Eastern.
While the conflict over Kosovo is the main focus at this week's NATO gathering in Washington, there are other dangerous challenges facing the alliance. CNN's David Ensor examines some of them.
There's nothing like a war to monopolize the attention of leaders of an alliance that's been at peace for 50 years. But there are a range of other new threats to NATO on the horizon.
Terrorism in all of its manifestly evil forms, cyber terrorism, chemical, biological, indeed nuclear, is destined to present as serious a challenge to the West as anything we faced during the Cold War.
The proliferation of weapons of mass destruction may be the issue that most worries U.S. officials. Pakistan, Iran, and North Korea are all testing increasingly long-range missiles. North Korea tested a missile in August with an estimated range of 3,000 miles, setting off alarm bells in capitals around the world.
The principal source of new long-range ballistic missiles in the Middle East is North Korea. Europe may end up being threatened by ballistic missiles which are deployed in the Middle East, but which originated in the Far East.
And the West has evidence that dozens of nations have programs to produce chemical, biological, or in a few cases nuclear warheads to put on those missiles. Iraq, Iran, Syria, Libya, North Korea, to name a few. Another threat, cyber war. Some call it the poor man's new smart weapon. Studies show American and European power grid computers, airports, and ports need better security against hostile online intruders.
Yugoslavia, Belarus,
And then there is NATO's old nemesis, Russia, which is suffering a worsening economy and deteriorating political situation as the country continues to cope with the shock of losing superpower status.
And if we treat Russia the way the Western nations treated Germany after its defeat in World War I, we might end up with a future Russia that was like Hitler's Germany.
Another fear that the government in Moscow could lose control of its dangerous weapons.
If there's anarchy, chaos, or conflict on Russian soil, then one has to be gravely concerned because of what that will mean for any potential usage of the weapons of mass destruction.
With NATO at war in the Balkans, the concern of some policy analysts is that the leaders at this summit will be hard-pressed to give what could be even more serious threats to the alliance the attention they deserve. David Ensor, CNN, at the Washington summit of NATO.
Stay with CNN for the latest developments on the strike against Yugoslavia and also the school shootings in Colorado. And thank you for joining us this evening. We leave you with a page from tonight's War Journal with Laura Logan.
In this remote area of northern Albania, they're turning the soil in preparation. Another Italian refugee camp is being built as refugees flood towards Kukës. It will function as a self-contained village, providing shelter, food, and medical care. Overnight here, this became this. And still they came. In a matter of hours, there were close to 5,000 refugees with no end in sight. The camp is built for 8,000, but authorities say they will have to take in many more.
Sunday on CNN's Late Edition, the latest on Kosovo with National Security Advisor Samuel Berger, plus the Colorado school shooting, Sunday noon Eastern on CNN.
A Fox Family original movie.
Yes!
Before the commercial.
Don't you ever think about anything besides sports?
Before the awards.
I'm not going to get a job, Fox. I'm going to be a professional athlete.
The legend began. Michael Jordan, an American hero, coming in April to Fox Family.
This is TCI at Home, the high-speed cable internet service. This is Bloomberg, the world's fastest-growing news and information service. Now, TCI at Home presents Bloomberg. Only Bloomberg on TCI at Home gives you multimedia financial news and always-on access to your personal stock portfolio and online trading. The world of finance is fast. Be faster with Bloomberg on TCI at Home.
TCI.
Classic movies.
Well, you just got to quit looking at me like I was George Washington, Babe Ruth, and Florence Nightingale all rolled into one.
Icon, legend, or just plain movie star. Through the years, John Wayne's been a lot of things to a lot of people, but he's never been a day of the...
Clear conditions tonight. It's going to be a little on the chilly side. Temperatures in the 40s tonight for lows, but tomorrow we should reach a high of about 74 degrees in the Portland, Vancouver area. And then this storm track's going to drop down on us on Sunday, and we'll see rain Sunday into Monday. Weather at the top of every hour here on the Power of 2000.